Alright, so this is going to be part 3 to What If Deku Was Taskmaster. So with that being said, let's just roll the intro.
Treat a bad bitch like she average. I'm a savage, little hoe, what you want do? I'm about cash if the raw fast. I'ma get that little nigga by any means.
Alright, so before we start with the What If, I'd like to say that if you see my community tab, you know that I plan on making a video about 5 mangas that I'll recommend. And, just be aware that that's going to be a video. I might do more in the future like that if it gets a good response, and I might do recommend animes or things like that. So if you like that content, comment down below. But it's either going to be uploaded either today if I have time or later on this week. So yeah, so in the last part we just got done with the heroes versus villains kind of test, and this part we're actually going to the USJ. So before that actually starts, we're gonna have to our story would start off right after the battle against Bakugo and Ida versus Uraraka and Deku. So after the students had needed to go to the infirmary, I guess, would go, and this is when All Might would actually take Deku aside, and this is where he would offer him one for all, right? And Deku, he before, when they get into that kind of room with the nurse, right, recovery girl, Deku wouldn't know right away, because he would be kind of curious on why All Might would bring him to that room, and he would be like, All Might, what's the big deal? You said I did great on the test, so why did you bring me out here? And he'd be like, young Midoriya, I see you have the greatest potential out of all the students here, and I wanted to give you something. And then he'd be like, well, All Might, you shouldn't have, but coming from you, that means a lot. And this is when he would tell him that he'd be like, young Midoriya, and this is when he would explain the kind of accident or the attack that happened where he has the injury and can no longer be at 100% all the time, and he has a time limit. And then after that, he would be like, young Midoriya, I have chosen you to be my successor, the successor of my quirk, one for all. And this is when Midoriya would be like, what? Or Deku would be like, what do you mean, your successor to your quirk? And this is when All Might would explain, like, yes, my quirk is able to be passed down from generation to generation, each generation given their own power in making it stronger. And this is when Deku would be like, passing down your quirk, is that even possible? He's like, yes, it is. I am the I believe it's the 8th successor, and Midoriya is the 9th. So he would give him, he's like, there's only one condition. You need to, eat, you have to consume a piece of my DNA for it to work. He's like, oh, okay, so how are we going to do this? And this is when All Might would give him a piece of hair, and Deku would be like, All Might, are you sure? And he'd be like, yes, that's the easiest way for it to work. Just do it and you'll get, my power. So Deku would, and he'd be like, All Might, I don't feel any different. And this is when All Might would be like, well, it takes time for it to take effect. So tomorrow it should be, taking effect by then. But since you've been training your body, for so long, and you're at the peak of fitness at this point, you'll probably be able to use 100% right off the bat. And with that quirk of yours, there's almost no doubt you'll master it pretty fast. So after that was done, they would kind of leave. Deku would leave and then go on with the rest of his day. And then we would get to the next day where Aizawa would say that they're going to the USJ to, study up on some rescue hero work. So he would say, pack, your hero suit, because it's going to be a very important kind of school trip. So everyone would be excited to go since it's their first school trip. And yeah, so the events of the media actually coming to the school still happen, they would still ask for students to kind of give their response about how All Might is the new teacher there. And Deku, he would like the attention a little bit, but he wouldn't really. He has that kind of lazy attitude, so it'd be like, yeah, he's the, he would tell the press like, yeah, I'm one of All Might's students, and he's a pretty good teacher, but there's not really much else to say. We've only had him for a day or two, or it might be a week at this point. So after that was said, he would just leave without giving, a goodbye to the press or whatever, and he would go on with how, throughout the day. The press would still get into UA because of Shigaraki, and people would get scared because of that, thinking that a villain was, invading. But Deku would see that it's just the media and try to calm people down with, I guess it'd be hard for him to get the attention, so he would tell Ida and Uraraka, and the same thing would happen where Ida would basically get everyone's attention by going above everyone with his by him being weightless and going in front of everyone. So yeah, so they would get to the USJ, or they would get packing up, they would get their hero suits and get ready to go to the USJ. So you guys told me that, or from the poll, you guys want the more modern version of the suits of Taskmaster. So yeah, that's what we're gonna go with. But a lot of people did want the kind of skull of the original, so we're gonna add the skull from the original costume, just add it to the kind of newer version of the suits. So yeah, that's what we're gonna do. And yeah, that's basically what's gonna happen. So after they get packed up, and Deku would tell everyone to get in, right? Not really caring too much about the order of lines, but I guess his vice representative would be Momo at this point, since she was the kind of runner-up in the original, or in canon. So she would try to get everyone in line, while Deku wouldn't really care. He would be like, alright, everyone get in. And then they would, not really listening to Momo, because I think they would respect both of them, but Deku kind of has that advantage of just being very skilled. So yeah, so when they get on the bus, they would still kind of have that discussion about how they talk about the 3 strongest students and things like that. So they would say that they wouldn't consider Deku the strongest at this point, because his quirk only copies things like actions, right? Later on we'll have it where he will be able to copy powers, and a lot of people, I'm not sure how long they should last. Some people want it permanent and some others don't. I could see why people don't want it permanent, but I don't know. So yeah, so they would say that Todoroki would be the strongest, followed by Bakugo, and then Midoriya in third, because of how his quirk works. And they would ask him they would ask Deku like, are you sure that your power has nothing to do with your strength? And Deku was thinking of saying no, but then he realized what happened and how he got All Might's quirk, so he's gonna have super strength eventually. So he's like, I'm not sure, maybe it has something to do with it, but I'm not completely sure. But let's get off that topic, because he doesn't really want to talk about it that much. And then they would kind of ask him like, so Midoriya, can you copy other things other than combat? And he's like, yeah, I could copy someone playing an instrument and basically do just as well as they did. And same goes with most of anything really, be it cooking, drawing, things like that, playing sports even, I could copy that. And they would be like, wow, that's such an amazing quirk, and you used it for combat where you could be like basically the best musician, artist, or anything like that. Yeah, but I wanted to be a hero. I thought it'd be more fun. And, art is good, music's good, but I just want to be a hero and see what I could do. Be the best. And basically everything I do. And people were like, yeah, I guess he has a point. When you could copy literally anything, he gotta be the best. But then after that, this is when Bakugo would get kind of mad because they're talking about how great Deku is, and he doesn't really like that because they're not really friends. They're kind of not really rivals, they just don't really like each other. So, yeah. And Todoroki doesn't really care since he's just focused on being number one and surpassing his father. So, yeah. So after this was done, they would get to the USJ, and this is when Aizawa would tell them to, be quiet since they just got there. And they would go and they would see the giant doors as they open, and they would see 13 on the other side. 13 would talk about how, your powers are meant for good, and describing different ways you could use them to help people, but at the same time, if you don't know how to control them, or if you mess up, they could actually hurt people. So Deku doesn't really care. He's just not listening, and he's kind of spacing out. So what happens after this is that a giant kind of portal opens up this gateway, and a bunch of villains come out. One of them happens to be a man with a lot of hands on his body, and the other one is a giant bird-like creature that's all black with a brain that's exposed. And this is obviously Shigaraki and the Nomu. So Kurogiri would go up to the classmates, or the class, and try to block their way after 13 would tell him to run, and Aizawa would go down there to fight. So because of this, everyone will be teleported across the kind of USJ, while Aizawa fights down below. So Deku would be in the kind of water with his shield and sword and gun and arrows, right? So he would be he would not be at a good advantage. He'd be pretty good at swimming because he must have seen someone swim at some point, even at like a somewhat amateur level. Plus, most people learn how to swim. I say that most, but there are people who don't, or choose not to for some reason. So as a kind of one of the villains come, one of the water villains come and try to attack Deku, and this is when Tsuyu would save him, getting him on the boat with what's his name, Mineta. So Deku at this point would be like, looks like we're in a bind, and we're kind of sitting duck out here with all these water villains everywhere. And then this is when he remembers what All Might told him about how his powers are gonna manifest. So he's like, okay, so his quirk works. He would then remember like things of how All Might would work, or how he would use his powers, and looking at it, he'd be able to do it as well since he's seen it before. So he would charge, he would put all one into his legs and grab onto Tsuyu and Mineta. So he's like, alright, let's see if this works. And he would jump as high as he could, and Froppy would use her tongue to kind of grapple themselves further, giving them more direction. And yeah, so the water villains are still not, they wouldn't be attacked, or not really attacked, they wouldn't really be subdued like they were in the anime, because Deku was the one who got him out of there instead of Tsuyu. So yeah, after that was done, they would get onto the shore, and they would find Aizawa basically being heavily wounded by the Nomu, getting his face smashed in. And yeah, Deku would be, he would be angry that this is happening. So he would kind of like push his hair back and be like, looks like I have to, save the day. And he would run towards what's his name? He would run towards Aizawa, and this is when Shigaraki would come up and try to touch Tsuyu with his hand, so he could disintegrate her. But right before he touches her, this is when Aizawa would use his quirk to nullify it. And then after that was done, he would question, like, what's happening? Why is my quirk not working? And he would know that it's Aizawa, and then the Nomu would start, attacking him even more. And this is when Deku would use his bow and arrow, since I believe since his gun was in the water, it wouldn't work as well because of the gunpowder and things like that, moisture. I'm not sure exactly how guns work, but I know that moisture can really affect them. At least that's what everyone ought to remember. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm not claiming to be, an expert in that field, but yeah. He would pull back the strings of his bow, and he would shoot it even farther, since he has all for one, and he would be a lot stronger, and his bow would be a lot reinforced because of his near superhuman levels before all for one, or one for all. So yeah, he would have that really strong bow, and this would hit. This would basically hit Shigaraki in the hand, and I would say this would be like a smoke bomb, and this is where you get Tsuyu and Mineta out of the way so he could fight them. So after that was done, this is when Deku would kind of rush towards Shigaraki, and he's about to hit him with his sword, basically with the sharp side, because it's a villain trying to attack a student. Right before they kind of before the strike actually hits, this is when the Nomu would actually get in the way and block the attack. But this would actually do a lot of damage. Deku would be using one for all at 100% with his sword, and the way he basically would have cut the Nomu's kind of side off, basically like how the ice was able to break off a large side, including the arm of the Nomu. It's basically like that. And Deku would be like, wow, this is great, I'm a lot stronger than I was before. A lot. Because at this point, since the generation thing with One For All is it gets stronger for each generation, Deku's One For All would be a lot stronger than All Might's, since it's at a different generation, and he was a lot more physically fit than All Might was at the kind of beginning of his quirk. So yeah, he'd be able to cut through the Nomu pretty easily, but the Nomu would start regenerating. So after that was done, he would go for another. He would question how many quirks does this guy have? Or he would ask him this guy has a regeneration quirk. This is gonna be pretty hard to do, or pretty hard to beat. And Shigaraki's like, how did you cut through him? This Nomu has shock absorption. It should be able to survive a hit from All Might. How strong is this kid? And then after the arm was fully regenerated, this is when the Nomu would go and rush Deku, and he would block the first hit with the kind of shield that he has. And after that was done, he would basically push back the Nomu with the shield, and he would try to go for another hit with his sword, but the Nomu would try to catch the sword, but this would cause him to cut off his fingers. And after that was done, Deku would hit him in the face with his shield, and he would tell Aizawa to basically use his quirk so he could deactivate the Nomus as he goes for the head. So after the Nomu's on the ground, he tells Aizawa that. Aizawa does it, and Deku basically goes for the exposed brain. And sticks his sword through it and uses a arrow with an explosive attachment to it to explode the basic head of the Nomu. And Shigaraki's basically seen this and is in awe of what's happening, and he gets very angry. He starts scratching his neck viciously, and he doesn't know what to do. He thinks this is like unfair, and he's thinking like on his mind like this shouldn't have happened. Why is it going down this way? And before he could do anything, he thinks about like going just for Deku and trying to kill him, and like how he has that on his mind since he sees Deku as like a cheat. So before he could do anything, this is when the other heroes come through, and Snipe actually goes and shoots Shigaraki in all 4 limbs, just how he does in the anime, and Kurogiri is forced to basically take him to run away with Shigaraki basically. So after this was done, so Deku and the other classmates, he would go around kind of helping them out, and Suyu would ask Deku like, how did you get so strong? Like, you shouldn't be able, I thought you were like peak of human evolution, but like, or not evolution, the peak of like fitness, but like that was like All Might levels of strength. And this is when Deku was like, he doesn't really know what to say, but he's like, I guess I was better than I thought. And he would just kind of walk away, and he would basically say like, oh, I gotta help the other students, so I'll be back. Just get Aizawa to the get some help, right? So he would go around helping the other kind of students that need help, like Momo and Jiro and Kaminari. So yeah, since Deku was touched by the Nomu, he would actually get his his shock absorption. So the way that the copy powers work from Taskmaster, the ultimate Taskmaster, I don't know what it's called. He's from like Earth 1610, if you want to look this up. It's that specific Taskmaster. He's able to copy powers of people who attack him, and apparently from what I've read in the comments, he could do this permanently. So yeah, so Deku would have shock absorption, and he wouldn't really know this at this point since there's no way to really tell yet. So yeah, so later on, and I guess he would also get regeneration since he was also the Nomu also had regeneration with it. So yeah, he would basically help out the other students, and a lot of people would see him as this kind of masterful tactician, since he still uses a sword and a shield. So he's kind of like a knight, but not really. And he basically gets everyone safe, or everyone becomes saved, like Kaminari, who was basically getting held hostage. But that's really it. The other students didn't really need his help, since they all kind of defeated their own villains. So after that was done, All Might did not need to use this, like, he didn't need to fight the Nomu, so his time limit's still the same. And it's the same as it was at the beginning of the series before the sludge villain, since he didn't have to fight the sludge villain either. So yeah, so the media would come and they would see that a teacher is very injured, but the other students are okay. So the students don't really say anything, or the media thinks that it was the teacher who saved everyone, but basically risked his life. And Deku, at this point, he is pretty cocky, but he's like, I don't really want to reveal too much about myself with my super strength from All Might, all for one, or one for all, basically. So he just makes up a story, talks about how the teacher was able to save everyone, or from the big threat, before the other heroes arrived. So yeah, this would go over with the media more well. UA would have a more positive view from the media, since everyone would see them as some, teachers would sacrifice themselves to save students, and actions speak louder than words, so they would very much respect the school for doing this. So after this, he would tell All Might what happened, and All Might would be surprised that he was able to use 100% off the bat. Or not really too surprised, but he was, he was kind of surprised that his version of All for One, or One for All, was a lot stronger than his. So, yeah. So I'm going to end it here, and in the next video, we'll go over the kind of sports festival and things like that. So, yeah. This is going to be the end of the video, like I said. So, yeah.